All right, everybody, we welcome you in live. It's our Buckeye pregame preview as Ohio State coming off the bye week, of course, getting set to take on Washington. It's going to be their first road game of the season and, of course, their first Big Ten game of the season. So Ohio State at Washington, and we got Nash with us here, of course. Justin Kinner Kev Nash with you here. Again, good Saturday morning, everybody, getting you set for today's Ohio State-Washington matchup, as well as, so many other big games, not just across the country, but especially the Big Ten, Kev.
Palm trees. I see palm trees, man. What's good, vacation guy? Oh, you better hit that road so you can make it back on time, man. What's good?
Well, the vacation's winning right now. Let me just put it that way. So,
hey, man, we back at it, man. Good to see you, man. Obviously the Buckeyes had a bye week last week, but now they're back in action against a foe that is going to challenge them. I mean, their quarterback is pretty good, not only with the arm, but with the legs as well. So we talk so much stuff about Ohio State's defense is this, Ohio State defense is that. Well, we're going to see. We're going to see how good they truly are because like you just talked about first road environment for the Buckeyes. We're going to see how, quarterback handles a road environment. We're going to see if this defense can really stop a dual threat quarterback today.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, if you look at for the sports bettors out there too, I mean, look, this is Ohio State's only favored by a possession. I mean, unless this line kind of shifts around as we get closer to kickoff, I guess they're a little over a possession favorite. 7.5 points. Ohio State's favored by Washington. Now, I think that this is going to be one of those weird games because Washington doesn't have that little number in front of their name, and it's going to be a close game. It's going to look ugly at times, and I think we'll come out of it with Ohio State being on top, but then people questioning, okay, Ohio State didn't look dominant in the process. Vegas is telling you expect this to be a close one. It has all the variables to be a potential, I don't want to say pitfall, but it's not going to be what we watched against Ohio State and Grambling in Ohio. I expect it to look ugly like it did against Texas. Look, Texas doesn't even have one of the best offenses as we thought it would. I think Washington's offense, especially their run game, is the best offense that Ohio State's defense has faced. So this is going to be a big test for Ohio State on so many different fronts. Obviously, you have Julian Sayin making his first start on the road, and that environment's going to just be an absolute madhouse. So I think that's going to be tough. How does he handle, the cadences? How does he handle getting the play calls in? How does he handle, with the games on the line down the stretch? Obviously, he played in a close one against Texas, but you had 100,000 people cheering for you. That's not going to be the case coming up later on this afternoon. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I think there's so many variables. First road game of the season for Ohio State. First Big Ten game. Julian Sayin making his road debut. And Washington, I think, is a lot better team than people give credit for. I think there's like 8 undefeated teams in the Big Ten right now. They're one of them. And this is a chance. And Washington has a ton on the line, too. It's not just, of course, to try to beat Ohio State, but a chance, even a close loss for them is going to put them fringe top 25 at that point. So I think there's a lot on the line coming up later this afternoon.
Absolutely. You look at this Washington team and you look at their ability to score. They put up 38 versus Colorado State, a 70 burger versus UC Davis, and you say, oh, man, look at those teams. They're nobodies or whatever. But they also put up 59 versus their biggest rival in Washington State in the Apple Cup just a week ago. So their offense is clicking. So they're coming into this matchup very confident. Like I talked about before with their quarterback, Damon Williams Jr., dual threat. And one of the things that we heard all about with Arch Manning was he was a dual threat. Well, Arch Manning was not a threat at all with his arm or his legs. But this kid is, and he will be, and he's shown that he has the capability to do that. So he's coming to his second year starting quarterback out there at Washington. I expect them to be able to move the ball on the Buckeyes. The big thing about Ohio State, not only from last year, but from this year, when teams get inside the red zone, they don't score touchdowns. So I think that's going to be the biggest part about Ohio State, keeping them out of the end zone. I think they're going to be able to move inside the 20s, but keeping them out of the end zone is going to be key for the Buckeye defense.
When Ohio State took on Texas, the only if you look, they came away 14-7. I referenced Texas going all the way back a month ago, basically, because that was the last time we watched Ohio State go up against a team that gave them any kind of resistance. I tell you, everyone was so excited about Ohio State's win over Texas and talking about how much the defense dominated Arch Manning in the pass game. I'm here to tell you, I didn't like what I saw Ohio State's defense against the run game. Texas ran the ball for 166 total yards. Obviously, they didn't punch it into the end zone. But the one thing, we're talking about the dual threat quarterback for Washington, they also have one of the best running backs in the country in Jonah Coleman. Coleman with 9 touchdowns in 3 games. I mean, 9 touchdowns in 3 games.
High school stats.
Yes, I mean, those are exactly high school stats, but he's, 51 carries on the season. He's averaging over 100-plus yards a game, by himself. So I just think that's something to kind of keep an eye on in today's this game. He had 177 yards against Colorado State and 2 touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns against UC Davis, 5 touchdowns in one game, and then only rushed for 59 against Washington State, of course, but did punch it into the end zone for 2. He's made a thumbprint on his thumbprint is on every single game thus far. So, well, yes, we're going to talk about the dual threat quarterback. How does the defense respond to that? I didn't like what I saw against Texas as far as how they defended the run, and now you have a dual threat quarterback and Coleman, in the backfield. I think that Washington presents a ton of problems for Ohio State. I'm very interested how this is going to look later today.
Absolutely. A lot of it comes down to Sonny Styles and Orville Reese. Are they going to be able to clean up? Are the guys going to be able to handle their responsibilities? Are you going to get nosy and try to take out the quarterback when you're not supposed to on those zone replays and stuff like that? Just do your job, know your keys, and attack where you're supposed to attack. If you're supposed to take the quarterback, take the quarterback. If you're supposed to take the running back, take the running back. So, these quote-unquote tune-up games that, Washington was able to do, they were inverse for Ohio State. They got their tune-up games after that big game versus Texas. So, all the things that they put on film versus Texas, I'm sure the coaching staff is like, hey, this opponent, this is going to be out the gate if you keep making these same mistakes. So hopefully during these quote-unquote tune-up games versus Ohio and teams like that, they were able to correct those things because you're really not able to see that type of stuff on tape because the scores were so lopsided. Are you doing what you're supposed to do? Like, are you filling the gap where you're supposed to be filling the gap? Or are you freelancing? That's going to be the biggest problem with Ohio State or biggest issue for Ohio State. Make sure you're not freelancing. Make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Obviously, Williams Jr., the quarterback, dual threat quarterback, as we talked about, what he could do with his legs. Yes, something to keep an eye on. He's rushed for 2 touchdowns on the season. He has 220 rushing yards already on the season as well. Again, he averages almost just about 7 yards a carry. So when he puts that ball on the ground, when he tucks that ball and goes, he's almost going to get a first down every single time. But we know what he can do with his legs. With his arm, Kevy's completed, 74% of his passes. He's, 68 attempts. He's completed 50 of those. He's thrown 6 touchdowns. So the weapons that they have as well, not just with Coleman in the run game, but Denzel Boston, the star wide receiver for Washington, of the 6 touchdowns that, that we've seen Williams throw, 3 of those, 50% of those have gone to Denzel Boston, who averages about 15 yards a catch. So they could pass it. They could run the ball with the quarterback. They could run the football. I've said it probably 100 times already. I don't like this matchup. I'm worried about this matchup. I don't know why. I have no clue, but I think that this presents a huge challenge for Ohio State coming up later today.
It's definitely a challenge. The reason I'm not biting my nails is because of Ohio State's run game. I think Ohio State's run game is going to be there. We saw this basically the slowly but surely switching to Bo Jackson to be the running back, the main catalyst at running back from James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson, more leaning to the more explosive, the younger, talented Bo Jackson. Funny story, my best friend, his son played baseball with Bo all through high school and stuff like that. So I'm kind of familiar with the name. I've never seen him play until he got to Ohio State, and all I would hear is he's the truth, he's this, he's that. I was like, well, you're gonna have to show me at Ohio State. And granted, the competition level isn't to Texas or Washington level, but he seems to have that pop that the other running backs didn't have in that first game versus Texas. So I'm anxious to see what Bo Jackson is able to do out there in the road game. I mean, to your point about kind of being nervous about the game, I would say I'm more nervous about the offense because you do have a first-time starting quarterback out there with Julian Saint, and then also, potentially a first-time starting running back with Bo Jackson. A lot of handoffs and things of that nature, things that we take for granted as football fans, but just simple catching a snap and turning the hand into a running back. 2 freshmen basically out there playing on the road. That's going to be tough for them. Hopefully they can settle in early or get some explosive plays to take the crowd out of it early, or maybe the defense makes a play to take the crowd out of the game early so they don't have those nervous jitters and things like that.
Yeah, the other thing too, we talked about how Texas ran the football in Ohio State, and again, I referenced Texas. It's the last Power 4 opponent that they played. Ohio State, they didn't really do anything well offensively that game. It was a very safe, game that they called for Julian Saint in his debut with the Buckeyes, of course, from a passing standpoint. But they also struggled running the football as well. Donaldson, 19 carries for 67 yards. James Peoples, 10 carries for 20 yards. They really couldn't get anything going in the run game. The interesting thing is you bring up Bo Jackson, who I agree, he just looks different. I mean, the way he hits the hole, the way he has that extra burst, it seems. we didn't even see him against Texas. So
Right.
I am curious to see what he does against Washington coming up. But I just want to see strides, obviously, all around offensively. This is the first test they've had since week 1. The only concern, if you will, and you know how I am with the quarterbacks, obviously, last year with, my disagreement when it came to Will Howard. But Julian saying he's had a little bit of the turnover bug over the last couple of weeks. But when you outscore your opponent, by almost 100 points over, the last couple of weeks, you can get away with those. If this is going to be as close and tightly contested game as whatever one envisions it being able to run the football, not turning the ball over. Julian Saint doesn't have to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he can't turn the ball over, and they have to run the football. Those are the things I'm keeping an eye on today.
Julian Saint is a young quarterback that gets greedy. Some of those turnovers he's had have been in the end zone and scoring position. So not only are you taking a touchdown off the board, you're potentially taking a field goal off the board as well. So you can't do those type of mistakes. The interception he threw, I believe it was against Ohio. He was trying to hit Carnell Tate on a corner route or whatever, and they got confused or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. A young quarterback is going to make those mistakes early on. I do believe that Ohio State needs to get Brandon Ennis more involved in the passing game on those underneath routes and those option routes and things like that, to get out those tough, gritty yards. The explosive plays with Carnell and Smith are going to be there. I want to see them drive the ball down the field, not with a dink and dunk approach, but like, hey, man, we don't have to hit the 50-yard bomb all the time. 8 yards is fine. 8 yards is perfectly fine. Utilize the tight ends and utilize Brandon Ennis a little bit more is what I would like to see out of the Buckeyes offense.
Julian Saint on the season, again, 71 attempts. He's completed 56 of those, completing nearly 80% of his passes. He's thrown for 8 touchdowns, the 3 interceptions that we talked about. The crazy thing is we knew this offensive line was going to be key. He's only been sacked 1 time. I think that's also important, too. I was just talking about the big guys up front protecting him against the defense of Washington. We talked about the run game. Obviously, what you get in Jeremiah Smith, from that standpoint. You talked about Ennis. Jeremiah Smith, 315 yards on the season, already with 3 touchdowns. But Carnell Tate, he's been – I remember mentioning this last week. You watch the Cincinnati Bengals offense. You have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. T. Higgins is the number 2 wide receiver, but it's more of a 1A, 1B situation. That's what this Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate thing is starting to line up. No one's going to take Tate over Smith, but Tate's production is right up there with Jeremiah Smith, and that's been a huge plus for a young quarterback like Julian Saint to have those targets to throw to. And the fact that we're sitting here saying, well, Brandon Ennis needs to step up. I think when that happens, this offense becomes even more scary than what it already has. Ennis and Bo Jackson could be the 2 wild cards coming out.
For sure. I think the passing game for Ohio State can be better than it was last year. As big as a fan of I was of, Ohio State last year and the quarterback situation they were rolling in last year with, but I think that the talent factor that Julian Saint possesses is just that much more than Will Howard possessed. So I think the passing game is going to continue to get better and better throughout the season just because of the talent factor. And then a quick story, a couple weeks ago, the week that you went to the game, Ohio State game versus OU, I was in Cleveland and we were coming back from Cleveland, and the wife, she wanted to make a pit stop on High Street. There was a shop that she wanted to go to. So we stopped on High Street, walking down the street, whatever, and see this tall gentleman. I was like, man, he's tall. Oh, that's Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate is the definition of a wide receiver. Long arms, long legs, lean as all get out. We look at Jamar Chase. He's built like a running back and built like a tank. Or we look like Jeremiah Smith. He's built like T.O., almost like a bodybuilder. When I think of a wide receiver, I think of Randy Moss, and that's how Carnell Tate is built. So, the fact that, we have this endless options of wide receivers is amazing for Ohio State. Let's use them. Let's score a whole bunch of points. Let's win this game because we need it.
All right, it's our Buckeye pregame preview. Justin, Kinner Kev Nash again, and we appreciate everyone hanging out with us, whether across our cluster of social media platforms, of course, whether it's on 92.9 Jack FM, 1410 ESPN Radio, which you can catch every Buckeye game, including today's game on all season long. Hot 102.9. I see you're hanging out in the hot studio. You were trying to hide it, but that old TV in the background, I'm a little disappointed that you covered it up.
I tried to hide it. It's not an old TV, it's a throwback TV.
It needs to be a throwaway TV is what it needs to be. That's
it should. It doesn't even work.
But no, Ohio State, Washington again, 3:30 the kickoff, 2 o'clock pregame coverage begins. Kev, you and Keith Byers, you're going to be at Submarine House over in Vandalia coming up later on today. So you have that going on. Busy afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Inviting everybody to come on out. Going to have plenty of giveaways. Going to do some trivia for T-shirts. Hang out with KB and myself right before kickoff, and obviously stay for the game.
Absolutely. Again, Ohio State, Washington, not the only big game coming up here this afternoon. Let's take a look at some of the other Big Ten games that's happening right now. I know some of that might be difficult to see. Let's see if we can zoom that in a little bit. There we go. Now it looks a little bit more easier to see. How about this one? We watched Illinois. Let me get your take on this too, by the way, because the biggest Big Ten game from last week, with me being off this week, hadn't had a chance to jump into it. Illinois obviously might have been a little ranked too high or whatever, or Indiana might not be ranked high enough. Your takeaway from last week's Indiana-Illinois matchup that has just skyrocketed Indiana to a lot more conversations than what we've had with them to start the season.
For sure. You're a big Kirk Cignetti guy. I am not. Not necessarily for his coaching ability, because obviously the man can coach. He's coaching those guys up at Indiana. But the fact that they put up a 62 burger on Illinois, and I was big on Illinois winning that game. Actually had a nice parlay going that day. I had bet Syracuse to win at Clemson. I had another game. So I was about to turn $5 into like $150. Until the night game, and that night game was a brutal loss for Illinois. I think Illinois is still a good team. They ran into a buzzsaw. I mean, Indiana dominated that game from start to finish. I mean, they had the block punt to start the game for a touchdown. They ran it well. They threw it well. They played great defense. Salute to the Hoosiers. I mean, turning the Hoosier state into a football state. So no longer is Indiana all about basketball. Looks like their football program is one to be reckoned with.
Yeah, Indiana moving up 8 spots after that blowout win over Illinois last Saturday. So Indiana sitting at number 11 right now in the latest AP rankings that came out earlier. But we'll focus on Indiana coming up in a bit. But Illinois, they dropped 14 spots, but they do remain in the top 25. And now they're, of course, going to welcome in USC to Champaign coming up, at noon here in just under an hour. So that's a big
noon kickoff.
It's a big noon, Big Ten, top 25 matchup. Number 23, Illinois, welcoming in number 21, USC. This is a big game for both teams. Which team is this a bigger game for?
Oh, it's a way bigger for Illinois. I mean, you got embarrassed last week, and obviously USC, they're 4-0, riding high, scoring a ton of points. But Illinois, like people of my ilk who were big on Illinois, who thought that Illinois had a chance to make it to the Big Ten championship game and make it to the playoff. Now, after being embarrassed, you have to win out. You have to win out. You might have to win out in style, because everybody's going to go back to that game that you got blew out very badly by Indiana. So this is way bigger for Illinois. You lose this game, it's over for you. You're afterthought.
Yeah, it's a big win for Illinois, but, I'm watching what Kirk Cignetti's doing at Indiana, and then I'm looking at Lincoln Riley at USC, and I have a feeling that Lincoln Riley has a few more resources than Cignetti does at Indiana. So I'm looking at these things I'm looking at Lincoln Riley and USC saying, hey, it's Illinois. It's a top 25 matchup. You need a top 25 win right now. You're undefeated. You've looked solid to start the season, no doubt, but all of that means nothing if you go and lose to Illinois coming up later on today. I'm losing patience with coaches like Lincoln Riley and Dabo Swinney and others who, when you look at a Kirk Cignetti, who you drop him into the losingest football program in the history of the sport, and within 2 years they're winning top 25 games, they're making the playoff, they're making noise with transfer players last year from James Madison, but yet Lincoln Riley with all the money, all the resources, the location of the school and everything, and they're struggling to consistently be a power in college football. It drives me nuts. It's a big one for Illinois, no doubt, especially at home, and you have USC in town. But USC, you start out 4-0, you're putting up a ton of points, maybe starting to trend in the right direction. You can't go to Illinois and lose, and that's no disrespect to Illinois, but when you're USC, you have to look down at an Illinois. And if you lose to an Illinois, the rest of the Big Ten is just going to be mocking you at this point. So I feel like USC has to win this one today.
Yeah, especially after Illinois got blown out. You lost to them. They just gave up 63. You couldn't score 53. Yeah, yep. You're right.
So continuing down the list, speaking of Indiana, who obviously beat Illinois last week, they move up to number 11. They're undefeated. They're 4-0. They're on the road at Iowa, 8.5-point favorites. Is this does this smell like a potential upset? Riding high after that win at Illinois, I could see the most Indiana Signetti thing ever is losing coming up here for another. That's a 3:30 kick on Peacock.
So everybody knows I'm not a Kirk Ferentz fan at all. Not a fan of his coaching style, not a fan of the guy. But I have to give credit where credit is due. I was talking to KB about this. The fact that they were able to put up 38 points last week versus Rutgers on the road, they should be commended for that. They should be commended for that. Like that, this wasn't, a backyard state of Albany or something like that. They were able to put up 30-plus points on. They put up against a like foe in Rutgers. This is where it happens. This is where Kirk Ferentz gets in his defensive bag and shuts down a high-powered team. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen in this game. Do I see it happening? No, I don't see it happen. I see Indiana winning this game. It's going to be close, but ultimately, I think Indiana wins by 7.
Yeah, this and it's a good look, and I think that a lot of people respected the win last week at Illinois. But if you turn right back around, and obviously Iowa's not ranked, but they're 3-1. It's not an easy place to play. They're good defensively, and if they can go up and put up more big numbers against a really, really good defense, I think Indiana's then really going to have people's attention. I still think some people, the jury's out on Indiana. I don't think I look at them as a national championship contender, but as we learned last year. One thing I do like about the 12-team playoff is that it does get our interest more in other teams. Obviously the 14 playoff, it trained me to only focus on the great teams. And if you weren't great, I didn't care about you. Well, the Indianas of the world showed me last year, I kind of care about the good teams. I don't look at them as a championship contender, but they're legitimately a playoff contender. You win at Iowa, it sets the stage for a nice little run for Indiana moving forward. We'll see what ends up happening. Another one, not another one, but the big one, the matchup of the day, coming up later on tonight, also on NBC and Peacock, will be Oregon at Penn State. Obviously, Oregon being completely overlooked. The defending Big Ten champions, undefeated last year, beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. This time they are at Happy Valley. We'll see what happens tonight, but this is going to be a big one. This is the first real test for James Franklin and Penn State, who has all the pressure and all the expectations. I think the winner of this one, I think it's almost the winner of this one versus Ohio State are the favorites for the Big Ten coming up later on. I think this is a huge one, the biggest game in the country today.
Game of the week, hands down the game of the week. You talked about it before. Oregon, the last time they played a big-time opponent, they got blew out by Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Penn State, they made it to the college football playoff, and they lost to Notre Dame. And then obviously they lost to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. So, Penn State has been donned that team that all right, man, they're bringing back a whole bunch of guys. They spent a lot of money. They got a couple guys in the portal to help the roster out. They're looked at it as the favorites to win the Big Ten. Well, go prove it. Go prove it versus a like opponent, like a Oregon Ducks that's coming into your house, a whiteout game at night. This isn't a big noon kickoff. This is a night game. So that fan base is going to be sauced up all day long, ready to rock. I can't wait for this matchup. I can't call it right now. I follow me on Twitter at Kinner Kev Nash to get my official prediction. Right now, I can't call this game.
Well, who needs it though? Who needs it? I think it's Penn State. Penn State. Because no matter what Penn State does, unless they're winning the national championship this year, it doesn't count. It's almost kind of like James Franklin is in the same seat that Ryan Day was in. No matter how many quote unquote big games you won, it is not the biggest game. Because you look at Ohio State, the run that they went on last year, obviously them losing to their biggest rival, to that team up north, they went on to beat Tennessee. And it's just Tennessee. You had it at home. Oh, you went out to the Rose Bowl, beat Oregon. Then that sparked people's interest. But the people were still looking at it like, well, can you win the big one? What about all those other games that we won? We beat Indiana. We beat, all these other teams going into that. We beat Penn State. That wasn't a big game. It doesn't count. It didn't count until you won the national championship. So now people looking at that Ohio State win versus Texas, they're like, well, it's another big game for Ryan Day. Ryan Day's just a big-time head coach. He wins big games and stuff like that. You have to hoist the natty to get the bad juju off of you. So Penn State has to win this game. Penn State has to win the national championship in order for people to see James Franklin in that program in a different light. No, it's the exact same situation, of course, that really the last two national champions have faced when you think about it, because, 2 years ago when Michigan, although they did cheat to win it, just to be clear, but no, Michigan, when they won their national championship, they Harbaugh had the same reputation, not being able to beat his rival, not being able to win big games, always considered overhyped. And when they would head into those situations, but then all of a sudden to win that national championship, you had to win big games. You had to be able and not just in the playoff, but obviously in the regular season as well. That year, Michigan, who, they had to go to Penn State, and they had to, go to Penn State and get that win. They obviously had to beat Ohio State. You had to beat, Iowa, who was number 16 in the country at that time in the Big Ten championship game. So they had to win those big games in the regular season to get to where they wanted to go. Last year, a little nerve-wracking. Ohio State, the biggest win they had was Indiana, and I think we all kind of were looking at the top 5, number in front of Indiana, and not really giving it that full credence that they were a legit team, right? So, but I said last year Ohio State I was not going to buy them to win a national championship because Ryan Day has never been able to prove he could win big games consistently. But I was supposed to believe that they were going to go win 4 top 25 matchups, 4 championship contenders in a row in 1 month. I just couldn't see it, but we saw it, and they had to do it, and they did it, obviously. Same thing with Harbaugh. James Franklin, he has to do the same thing. And if they get a win today against Oregon, I think that's going to give a lot of people confidence in their national championship pick, if that's their pick. So it's a big one for them. And then Oregon, of course, you get this win today, and I think right away you're back into the conversation. It's not just being a Big Ten contender, but a national championship contender at that point.
I mean, I'm just looking at Oregon's schedule. Just say things don't go Oregon's way. Say they lose this game. They have another opportunity versus Indiana the following week. But then you look at the rest of the schedule after Indiana, at Rutgers, Wisconsin, Iowa. Yeah, going across the country to Rutgers, going across the country to Iowa, maybe that'll be more of a test than I'm giving it credit for. But, they're, to be perfectly honest, they're in the catbird seat, man, because they don't play teams like Ohio State or Michigan this year. Like, they have 2, games on their schedule that kind of like pique your interest. And one of those is today versus Penn State, and then the following week versus Indiana at home.
All right, we've talked about some of the Big Ten matchups as we wrap up our Buckeye pregame preview. We've taken a look at some of the big matchups in the Big Ten. Non-Big Ten, what's the biggest matchup that has your attention here today?
Oh, without a doubt, man. It goes down in the mighty SEC, man. It's all about Bama and Georgia. Same time as the Penn State game, 7:30. So I'll have the TV on the Oregon-Penn State game. I'll have the iPad on the Bama-Georgian game. And I'll have the phone on the other hand, just texting everybody, wow. Oh, my goodness, this game's crazy. So can't wait. Locked in.
Yeah, Alabama, Georgia, that's a big one. Another sneaky good one out of the SEC, of course, that everyone will be locked in on, LSU and Ole Miss. LSU, number 4, undefeated, at undefeated, number 13, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 1.5 favorite in that one. But imagine what that does for old Lane Kiffin and company if they're able to pull that one off. So we'll see. We'll see. No doubt about it. All right, closing thoughts on Ohio State, Washington coming up. Again, that's a 3:30 kickoff, and we'll have that for you on 1410 ESPN Radio and 92.9 Jack FM. Your thoughts on that matchup right there. Final thoughts on that one.
Buckeyes run to victory. Bo Jackson goes over 200 rushing yards. Ohio State wins 31-17.
All right, I'm an Ohio State fan. Everyone knows this. I don't feel good about this game. I don't feel good about it.
You never feel good about Ohio State.
I think Ohio State's losing today. I don't know why. I have not liked this matchup. I've been keeping an eye on it over the last 2 weeks, watching Washington, watching how they run the football, throw the football. Quarterback can run with the ball as well. It's that road environment. It's Julian saying there's just a lot of variables right there. So, but this will be as impressive of a win as the Texas win. I know as goofy as that sounds, when you add all the variables into it, with how tough of an environment it's going to be, the debut of Julian Saint on the road, the weapons and the challenges that offense presents for Ohio State's defense, I think that will secure everyone's confidence in them being the number 1 team in the country if you go win on the road at Washington. Look, it's the first time they've met in the Big Ten, obviously. I don't know. People's perception, the way I hear people talk about Washington is as if that Ohio State's about to go take on an Iowa or those. No. What tier, if we're going to tier the Big Ten, what tier is Washington in? Are they in that Penn State tier? Are they in that tier where even on a non-good year, there's still a challenge? Like, what tier would you put Washington in?
I would put them in the second tier. I put them in the second tier. Okay. I think there's a clear tier of Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. And then there's like the tier of Indiana and Washington. Like there's a cluster in there. And then there's the rest of the Big Ten. Yeah. There's clearly in my opinion, the top two dogs being Ohio State and Oregon, then Penn State, Michigan, whatever order you want to put those guys in. And then, yeah, absolutely, second tier program. And that's nothing wrong with that, because the second tier program in the Big Ten is going to play in the college football playoff.
And that's why today this is a team that was just in the national championship game a few years ago. I mean, this is a team that's putting guys in the NFL regularly. So, yeah, they're solid. And I think that they're going to be, if they play Ohio State close and ultimately lose, I still think they crack the top 25. I think they're in the top 25. As long as they don't get blown out, they're in the top 25 coming up next week. But no, I'm an Ohio State fan. This matchup makes me nervous. I'm giving respect to Washington as far as that goes. And by the way, it's not a bad thing for the Big Ten if you have other teams who can, step up and knock Ohio State off every once in a while. I don't want it consistently. But again, I need to see it from Julian Sayin. I need to see it from Bo Jackson. I need to see the run game come back against a top team. And I need to see that defense stop the run. There's still a lot of question marks I have, and I think Washington will answer a lot of those. And, you got Illinois coming up in a few weeks as well. Like, the hits keep coming, and that's a good thing. I like that the Big Ten is now presenting teams that are giving Ohio State a challenge. Even if you don't think that they're going to lose, there's at least challenges, because that was not the case for the while. If Ohio State wasn't facing Penn State or Michigan, it was we expect them to win by 40 or 50. I think that's not going to be the case every week, especially today against Washington.
Absolutely. The new world of college football, with the transfer portal, whatever, you're able to restock your team and find the guys that fit your style and your program instead of going through the high school ranks and waiting for those dudes to develop. I mean, look at Kurt Signetti. He was able to get his guys from AMU. This year, another team out. They were 2-10 last year, and now they're right back in it because they hit the transfer portal. They hit on their transfer. So, yeah, the new world of college football keeps the others invested.
All right, good stuff. We are done. I know that, again, we're about less than 20 minutes away from kickoff for all the noon games. A lot of big college football games coming up. Today's a good day for college football. There's so many fun matchups coming up, and I'm glad the Big Ten plays here too. So, lots to talk about. We'll be back at it. I get back, later, late tonight. We'll be at Frickers tomorrow over on Woodman, Keith Byers and I. And then, of course, you're going to be later this afternoon at Submarine House in Vandalia. So plenty of opportunities to see us out and about. So come out and say hello. But that does wrap it up for us until next week. Until next week, this has been our Buckeye pregame preview across the board on all of our socials. We appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully Ohio State wins. I know I'm a bad fan. It's not that I'm picking them. I want them to lose. I'm just worried about the matchup. I can't wait for it coming up later on this afternoon. Thank you, Kev.
Go Bucks.